Tonight we have Dan from Calibre magazine. Welcome back to the show, Dan.
Hello.
And Adriel promised 3 long years ago, episode 423 to be exact, right after our last election, that we will have you back on the show to talk about politics. Lots of things has changed. O'Toole is no longer the leader of the CPC. Poilievre has been in that chair for a while. Trudeau resigned, and we got a new prime minister, and we're having an election going right now. Also, you mentioned in your very recent video on YouTube why the Liberals are likely to mislead voters on gun policies. This is going to be one of, if not the most important election of our lives as gun owners, and we would like to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I'm glad that you want to hear my thoughts, because God knows my thoughts are in my head, and I'm glad to hear other people want to hear those things.
Why don't you introduce yourself, Dan?
What an absolute shit show this election's going to be.
So Dan, tell us about yourself.
This is awkward now. It's very quiet. I don't know what's going on. So overall,
what do you do, Dan? Tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself to the listeners. Should they have the misfortune to not know you?
If the listeners don't know me, I make a gun magazine. Have been doing so for 14 years. Have been involved in gun politics for 20 years now, I guess, overall. Because I first got involved in this whole thing when the long gun registry was up for debate, which it now isn't. But I there was a preamble to this video that has thrown me off. And I think overall, what I want gun owners to realize is that this election that we're facing is absolutely the most important one that we're facing. Because if Carney wins with the candidate that he has, Natalie Provost, there's no world in which we don't face a dramatic shift in regulation around guns. And I told Adriel, like in the preamble, like I said, it threw me off because now I'm all messed up. But I was going to make a video about this, about the fact that on March 7th, when they did that ban of 179 guns, it was almost like a subtext that there was a paragraph in the press conference stating that the government was going to revisit firearms classification. And if you read it, and you parse the language, they want to modernize the Firearms Act to bring it in line with where they are now. And there's no world in which you read that, given what we know, what we've gone through for the last few years, where you don't say that's the government's admission that they want to legislate semi-automatic firearms into prohibition. Yeah. Like there's no other, like that's it. Like they said it's and I wish in live, like maybe your guys' editors are better than me, put the clip of the paragraph in this video. And they say, we want to modernize the legislation around firearms classification. And you go, well, the only thing that's changed with firearms classification, modernization, has been the banning of a ton of semi-automatic firearms. So when they say we want to modernize that, you just have to go. Like they just want to say, okay, if it's a mag-fed semi-auto, it's banned, and they want to make that law.
Classification is prohibited. I think that's what they're going to do. Yeah.
Like it's like it's not even that you need to think that. It's that's what they're saying. Like it's so clear. Like the government says we want to modernize the legislation around firearms classification to reflect where we're at currently. Where we're at currently is that most semi-automatic rifles are now illegal. That's just reality. If they want to make legislation that reflects that, how else do you interpret that? Like they're just going to go, we had the December of last year, the May 2020, the ban of March 7th, guns banned by name. They're going to take those and say, these are all mag-fed semi-autos. We're just making them illegal. That's And that's why I say, like, this is a huge, huge election issue. And when I see people say, like, again, referencing the pre-taped preamble that was so distracting for me, I think it will be a shit show is the exact words that were used, which I really enjoyed. We are facing an existential crisis. Like, there's no, like, it just is. Like, if Carney wins, one of his candidates is the most staunch 35-year veteran of gun control. Like,
rabid, I would say.
Yeah, like I you know what, I'm not even gonna say rabid because I don't want to, like, it's not about her. Like, I'll be honest, if I'd been shot 4 times like she was, I would probably have a very different opinion of firearms. So I'm not even going to bring her up because I don't blame her for her position. But, like, imagine if the Conservatives had a candidate who was a gun lobbyist. They don't. But imagine if they did. Like, imagine if Tracy Wilson was literally, like, let's cut the shit. Like, imagine if Tracy Wilson was literally a CPC candidate.
Yeah,
that would be
screaming from the hills.
And yet, the Liberals have recruited her opponent as a candidate. So that we're facing this reality is like, yeah, it's going to change. Like, if he wins, we will absolutely be facing a government that says semi-automatic mag-fed rifles are banned, and the only rifles you can own are rifles that are hunting guns, which is, to reference what you said earlier, the video that I made about, you know, the Liberal Party is going to campaign on the fact they're not banning hunting guns. They will continue to campaign on that point. So if they win, the only guns you will be able to own will be guns they approve as hunting guns.
Yeah, no more target guns. And the other thing, they just started mentioning it at the last press conference they did, the rapid fire. Rapid fire. This is they allow civilians to shoot more than experts think you should be allowed to shoot. That sounds like a lot like Australia,
and New Zealand,
and a lot like what Australia used to ban pump action shotguns and lever action shotguns.
Yeah,
because they're rapid style. The assault style is not even enough anymore. Now they're just going to say, no, those are all like completely prohibited. You can't have those. Well, and now we're going to have rapid fire.
That's what I think gun owners have to realize. Like, I've seen comments from people being like, oh, well, I'm a gun owner, but I'm going to support Carney because, you know, there's bigger issues, blah, blah, blah. Like, I get it. There are a ton of issues. I have 2 kids. I'm 40. I have no retirement savings. Like, I get it. There are big issues. But this is one of those issues where there will be no bigger movement. And that's what I think gun owners got to get. In that, like, let's say if Carney's going to be better than Poilievre on economics, let's just say that. Because, like, the dude is a finance banker. He's probably very good at that. If he's 15% better than Poilievre, he's going to be 110% worse on guns.
Yep.
So your stock portfolio, your pension, etc., you're going to notice like a tiny little change, but you're not going to have the same guns, and your kids, and they won't. Like, when you say about like Australia with hunting guns, like, there are countries in Europe that literally say you get a moose license. And then if you get that moose license, you can have guns of the varying calibers that are approved for moose licenses. And you need to prove competency with those guns to get that gun before you can even own it. And these are countries that Mark Carney says we are the most like in North America, which is just bizarre from like a historical perspective. Like, we are not like the US with regards to gun culture. I totally get that, but we are closer to the US with regards to gun culture than any European country. So when he says, oh, we're the most European and North American countries, I think gun owners have to look at that and go, like, so this is what he wants is this bizarre, like, you can have a gun if we say you can? It's It's very different from, I think, what Canadian gun owners are used to. And I think that's what I hope Canadian gun owners realize.
Well, and I think like you were talking about economics and that kind of thing, and I think a lot of people are were before looking at affordability and economics, and that's why they wanted to get away from the Trudeau Liberals, is because the affordability has gotten so much worse, right? I'm not sure if I think people right now are looking at Carney and just perceiving that, like, because they haven't really seen, like, a lot of Canadians haven't seen the guy talk. But perceiving that he's going to be better at competing with Trump and going head to head against Trump. But I don't know. Trump's too much of a wild card to say, like, oh, this guy's a better negotiator. This guy's a better finance banker guy. He's going to be better at negotiating with Trump. That's really hard to say because the guy is so unpredictable that it's a roll of the dice whether Carney will do better with him or Poilievre would. Oh, Poilievre, a fellow conservative, maybe he would go easy on us, right? Or maybe not. Or Carney, oh, maybe the finance guy will be able to figure out something and, pull one over on him. Doubtful, but it's possible, right? So I think, like, people are putting this idea out there that doesn't have any evidence behind it. I don't know if he's going to be better for Trump or not.
And people are just afraid. So
yeah,
people need to take a deep breath, realize that the U.S. and Canada are both bigger than Trump, no matter what the news wants you to think. And he's not going to be around for long. And you can't do anything about what he's going to do. You literally can't. I saw Jagmeet today going on about the NDP will fight Trump. Wait, were you going to just go down to New York and do a little fisticuffs with him? What are you babbling about? You can't do anything about the guy.
Yeah.
You can just
Even
mitigate the effects. It's like a hurricane. You can't do anything about a hurricane. It sucks. It's coming. There's nothing you can do about it. You just got to deal with it and get through it.
I think that's very... I think that's, and this is where, so, like, I'm a political junkie, as everyone knows. And having seen so much of the comments around the election at this point, which is what, like 2 weeks in, I've always wondered, we keep hearing that Trump is going to be the ballot box question, which I think is a fair comment. But I also think I've seen no one address the fact that, like, issue fatigue is also a thing. And I think in 4 weeks' time, are Canadians going to care? Like, today was, like, you look at today, Liberation Day, with the new tariffs and stuff, and everyone being all flustered, Russell Jimmies about that. Like, no one cares. Like, in reality, like, you go into the political sphere, the CBC, the news, there's tons of talk about today, Liberation Day, tariffs, etc. You go to a coffee shop today when new tariffs were supposed to come in, etc. Most people go, I don't care anymore. Like, it's been 2 weeks of tariffs. Will they, won't they? And we're kind of over it. Like, we're just moving past it. And I think in 4 weeks' time, when the election happens, I think there's a very real situation where this whole question of Trump and tariffs being the ballot box question is something that people are just done with. Like, we've moved past. And that's where I think, if Poilievre can just, I will say it does give him some leverage to say, hey, Canada, our own country, interprovincial trade, sovereignty, etc. If he can leverage that in 4 weeks' time, he might win legitimately. I don't, like, knock on wood, because God knows I see the same polls and I'm very scared of what the future holds. But, like, there is a world in which Trump as the foil is no longer relevant at the end of the month.
Oh, man,
and I don't understand why that's not a thing.
Like, Trump derangement syndrome runs years long. It never stopped. Like, the first time around, it didn't stop the whole time. It was, like, at the forefront the whole time. And this time, oh man, it's coming on strong.
Well, he's extra crazy. Like, I remember I was in SHOT Show, and it's not that I was like, I don't really care. Like, I'm not an overly partisan person, to be totally honest. That might surprise people, but, like, I'm not a conservative or a liberal. I'm just a dude who likes guns and motorcycles mostly. But I was at SHOT Show when he was inaugurated, and watching his inauguration speech on literally the Springfield Armory screen in Vegas was a thing. It was super cool. Like, it was just like, oh shit, this is history. I'm part of it. I'm watching this happen. He's fucking crazy this time around.
Yep.
Like, talking about annexing Greenland and taking over Toronto, like, what the fuck? Like, this is insane. Like, how is this? Is this real life? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills every goddamn day when I open the news.
It's
And I
like the
just think
Onion took over and no one noticed.
Except the Onion is apparently named Donald Trump, which, like, the dude ran a reality TV show called The Apprentice, and now he's the president. Like,
The second time.
Again.
Trudeau was
Yeah.
a shitty prime minister. Again, like, Trudeau was a shitty prime minister, and he was a snowboard instructor. Like, we are in a different timeline now, folks. And I think, with regards to guns, I mean, you know, to bring it back to that, you see Pauly Saint-Souviant today talking about how, you know, apparently Canadians are scared that the threat of annexation means that Canadians worry about American-style gun laws. Like, no, that's insane. No, most Canadians want a gun. Yeah, like,
more than
my
ever.
mom hates guns. Always has. The whole time I've run an entire gun magazine for 14 years, she friggin' hates guns. The first time she said, "Hey, how can I get a gun?" was after Donald Trump said, "Hey, we're going to annex your country."
Yep.
Like, it is so, like, I don't even know where we're at. Like, we're just in this whole different world now. I don't think anyone knows how to react.
Isn't it weird that Donald Trump is the one who actually made Canadians give a crap about Canada? Because normally we're the can't wave a flag, you don't want to say I'm proud of being Canadian, any of that stuff. Blah, blah, blah.
You can't wave a flag. The flag is
racist.
bad.
Flag is
It's racist. You shouldn't wave a flag.
Yeah.
And then Donald Trump wins, and suddenly the flag is the best thing ever. Like, it's so bizarre.
Well, that's that left-wing nationalism, right? Like, in Canada, nationalism shows up as left-wing nationalism. So we get this existential crisis, and people are like, we got to get behind Carney to fight for us. The left, the
guy not
guy,
from
right?
Canada.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they care about that part. They're just going to get behind the left-wing politician.
But I sure wish they did.
It would require people to know anything. Like, I've had so many. I'm also a political junkie. The last decade, I've been very politically involved, and I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time in the last couple of years just constantly listening and paying attention to everything, and it's really wild how many. I live in Vancouver. I've worked in the film industry. I'm very, you know, I've got a lot of weird circles of very artsy, very, very left-leaning friends who have just completely lost the ability to critically think. Like, there isn't it like they deleted that part of their ethos completely, and it is wild how quickly they've jumped on someone that they, for all right, should hate. Like, Carney, for a lot, like,
they hate
everyone in the progressive sphere that's like waving that Carney flag right now. He's the guy that's going to get this done. I'm like, you don't know anything about him, and you are intentionally choosing not to. If that is your stance, yeah. Who like again, the further you dig into it, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. But so I had just a question. Oh no, it's gone. Come back to me. There was a question.
I mean, I that's one of my biggest frustrations, is that, like, Carney is someone who likely has a net worth of hundreds of millions of dollars. Realistically, like, just is.
Hopefully.
Dude's a finance guy, and he's winning in. And this is. I guess I'll just go straight to the point. This is a criticism of the Conservatives. They are losing in the polls to a guy who is Canada's Donald Trump. The guy is a finance bro who worked for Goldman Sachs in New York, made hundreds of millions of dollars, is completely divorced from our experience. He made $1 million a year working for the Bank of England. Like, this dude is that guy.
Yep.
And yet somehow Pierre Poilievre is the less approachable candidate the one that people think is somehow separate. Oh, he's been in government forever. He's someone I can't align with. Like, my brother in Christ, the alternative is a dude who made hundreds of millions of dollars. His wife, like, I am not a tinfoil hat guy. I am not that dude. But his sister-in-law is best friends with Ghislaine Maxwell? Like,
Yep.
what the fuck? Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, it's how are you losing to this guy? Like, it is bizarre that they are somehow being less relatable than a guy who is the least relatable person you will ever meet, and completely says so every time he gets in front of a microphone. Every time Mark Carney goes, here's a microphone, I'm going to show Canadians how unrelatable I am, because
Tell the CBC to F
Well,
off.
so like,
like, look inside yourself, Rosemary Barton. Like, are you I'm not supposed to say that word. Are you insane? Like, it's Rosemary Barton. She's got 20, like, I don't like her.
Nope.
Whatever. But she's got 20 years worth of experience. She is the CBC's head of political reporting. She has a great resume herself. And yet she asks you one question about conflict. Like, and it bothers me so much, because, like, guns is obviously my bailiwick, but, like, we are talking about a dude who has hundreds of millions of dollars in a stock portfolio. The first thing he did was say, no carbon tax. Show me a stock portfolio worth 7 figures that isn't impacted by the end of a carbon tax. Then his second thing was no more capital gains tax. Yay. Like,
despite the fact that the country was literally going to burn 6 months ago, and we
this
would be
is literally
storming
the guy
rich
that
people's apartment buildings.
everyone that was advocating for the capital gains tax rate inclusion, this is the guy they're talking about. It will only impact the 1%. Mark Carney is the 1% that impacts, and
he's the 0.1%. Come on,
it is. I'll be blunt. It's fucking nuts that no one is talking about this. Like, where the fuck is the NDP on this? Like, Jagmeet Singh should be going up one side of him and down the other, going, how much tax are you saving? Because you canceled a tax while you're prime minister with no oversight, no parliament. It was prorogued. That should have been his fucking day one attack, and he's not doing it. And as people can probably, it drives me absolutely fucking nuts.
Well, I think he knows.
For sure, because he's making a shit pile of money.
Well, Jackie's not really doing anything right now. He's just, I don't know, warming up a bench. He'll get kicked out after the election.
Well, all right. I have 2 points. For one, I push back against the Conservatives are losing this. Like, I mean, to be fair, it's all polling right now. I feel dubious about some of that, but the Conservatives aren't like actively losing a whole bunch of support. Like, it has been the collapse of the NDP and the bloc that has been the fortunes of the Liberals. Like, let's be honest about that. It is a massive collapse for the bloc support, and a massive collapse for the NDP support that has been the 20-point jump up for the Liberals. Like, the Conservatives have lost a little bit, and we'll see on election day how many young folks actually care if they can own a home or not, because that'll be a factor if they actually go vote for a change. So like that like. I don't know. I don't like the narrative that the Conservatives are just suddenly losing support, where not really. They've been down a couple of points, but that has been the narrative. And there, I have a friend who's he's run for the NDP a couple of times. He's actually moved to Edmonton to run there. Yeah, I know, right? Hey, film folk, right? Yeah, shout out Sean. But he does not listen. I assure you. No. Nice guy. He's run for the NDP a bunch of times, and and he made a good point that a lot of polling can be influential, and I feel that way in a very real way. That you look at some of the original polls that started showing that horse race starting to close, and you rip into the data for okay, who were you asking some of these questions to, and to what capacity, and you're like, oh, did you manipulate that sample a little bit? or maybe a lot. Did you maybe ask like 80% of this cohort to get these numbers, and then you start to encourage a certain thing? That just brought me to my second point, that like there is still a thing that you had kind of mentioned before, Dan, about we'll see what happens in a month, right? Like people might actually be over this in a month, maybe not. But there has always been a thing in elections as far as like, peaking too early. We haven't actually seen them peak yet, but I mean, this is so weird because it just doesn't feel A, real, and B, like anybody knows what's going to happen, which is really interesting.
It could be when people start paying more attention to closer to the election, when it actually a week or two before, when people are like, oh yeah, I should actually, go look things up.
Nobody's
it may
going
change. And it could be that Carney gets in front of more mics and continues to do a bad job of it. That's what I'm hoping for.
That's going to be the thing when we see, and it sucks that they're so close, but when we see the debates, that's going to be interesting because he's going to get steamrolled in both of those. Unless they are doing debate prep every day from now until then, he's going to get slaughtered in the French election, and he's not enough of a politician to do well in the English election like that. Or in the English debate, like the liberal debate was a pillow fight. It was so
they were helping him.
Like beyond, so a couple things. Like here in BC, we had the recent provincial election with John Rustad being the Conservative candidate versus the NDP, and I'll be honest, like no one thought Rustad would win because he's not a good candidate. Like
Nope.
he's much like Carney. He doesn't speak well. At the end of the day, you're voting for something, and he wasn't that guy. And I see that in Carney every time he gets in front of the mic, and I think that I hope that will have a role. And like I said, like I wouldn't trust Mark Carney to change with the brakes on my car because he's got a great resume. He's super smart. He's been to Harvard on a full ride scholarship, but I mean Michael Ignatieff taught there, so the resume is not enough. But I think also too, I'm very curious how Canadians view what he will do. Like he has, like when I said like, so that the recent Paul Chang issue of the last weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of the politics of that aside, demonstrates that he doesn't really have a great team, because a good political team would say, you turf that guy. Like the dude literally said, kidnap my opponent and give him to a hostile government. You turf that guy in 45 minutes or less.
Yeah. You don't say, oh, he learned his lesson.
It's a teachable moment.
Teachable moment. Yeah.
So it's funny you say teachable moment, because that is like, I read that term where he said this is a teachable moment into a microphone, and I thought, this dude's fucked. Because any reasonable political staffer, especially with communications, which is kind of tangential to my job, would say there are certain words you don't say. Those words include teachable moment, because the last guy who cratered the freaking Liberal Party kept saying teachable moment. So when he says teachable moment, most Canadians think blackface, because that was our first teachable moment. We all learned you don't wear blackface because Justin Trudeau did. And I think it shows that he doesn't have staff around him that will correct the mistakes he's making. And that's where I worry. Well, not worry, I guess hope. But I think it's one of those, in the next 4 weeks, if you have a guy who's a terrible politician, whose staff is not correcting the mistakes he's making, where do you end up? Probably not winning, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, to talk about gaffes and that kind of thing, I think Mendicino's gaffe around Bernardo was bad messaging. And where's he right now? Right back in the fold,
Chief of
right?
Staff.
Chief of staff. So, like, I agree with you, Dan. I think that he's got all the same characters around him that Trudeau had by and large, and they're telling him the same things. He's going to start. like when he started making his announcements about housing, I was like, Jesus, this sounds like one of Trudeau's policies on housing that never worked. If you guys think this is going to work, you guys are crazy. We've heard this before.
Yeah,
so
let's
many
do it
times.
again.
Plant 2 million trees, and it's gonna be awesome. And no trees were planted.
So
Also,
yeah.
you're not going to be able to own the guns that I have off screen right here that I still own. That's what Trudeau said. That's Carney to a T. I think it's. I think to sound optimistic, which I hate to do because it scares me. I think the polls Carney is at right now is the highest he'll get. I don't
they're
see
pretty
how
high.
he keeps going up.
yeah,
Can't get
I
any better.
pretty high.
don't see-
Like,
but it's going to go down. I don't see how he keeps going up from here. Like he's rubber meeting road kind of situation where you can say like shit like we're going to plant 2 million trees. And we go, oh, I like that. I
Billion,
like
2
trees.
billion,
I want to do
billion.
that.
with a B, yeah.
But then they won't, and it'll feel very much like Trudeau. And I'm really hoping Canadians come around. If they don't, I'll say like I'm one of those guys where if Canadians vote for this dude and he wins, I'm gonna be a bit broken.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
fundamentally. Like I don't know if there's a future for me and my family in this country. I don't know if I want a future for me and my family in this country if he wins. Like
No,
it'll be fucking 14 years of liberal government and everything has gotten worse. I am so tired. Like you referenced Adriel, the gun owners who say, I'm a gun owner, but I want to vote for this guy because he'll do things better. Nothing is better. Like if you gave 100 people a time machine and said you can go back to 2015 with Stephen Harper, 99 of them would go, yeah, that's better. Let's go back to then. That'd be awesome. Houses were $450,000. A gallon of milk was $2. Gas was what, 89 cents a liter. Like everything was better, and yet somehow we are still confronting. What I don't get is young people, like especially young people. Like I
think young people are polling.
young people are
pretty
polling
hard
really,
conservative.
but
It's
like
the
you still
older
see like
people.
Reddit. Like
Oh,
these
Reddit's
young
weird.
people on Reddit going, oh yeah, like no, we can't because it's going to be worse. Like
That's because of the
what?
conservative secret agenda, which never shows up. And some people fall for that fear-based crap, right? And I think that's what's
kills me.
happening right now with Trump. It kills me too, because when I look at all this stuff objectively, because I don't get emotionally really hugely caught up in this stuff, and I can sit back and look at it and say, this is all bullshit. It is clearly bullshit, 100%. It is the exact same clown car with a slightly different clown behind the steering wheel, you know, same train accident, different conductor, whatever metaphor you want to use. And they're just feeding you lines of crap and you're just like, sounds good. But if you get out of the emotion of it, how do you fall for that? And the tribalism of it, like there shouldn't be none of this, you know, no matter who the liberals put in, I'm voting liberal. That's what my daddy did and my granddaddy before me. And hear that mostly from NDP people, but liberals too. I know people that literally vote liberal,
of them.
right? Because they vote liberal. And they will always vote liberal. And you've got that tribalism that no matter what my guy does, it's always the right thing. And no matter what your guy does, it's wrong. And you're evil for believing in it. And that's not the way it works. Like everybody should be fairly agnostic, as Dan said, with, you know, the liberals do some stuff right. The liberals do some stuff wrong. The conservatives do stuff right. The conservatives do stuff wrong. Like every political party, like Trump, sometimes the dude's right. He's not wrong. It's not wrong. It's just the way he is. But you say that to some people, oh my God, and they will lose their freaking minds. And yeah, the guy's an idiot and he's insane, but he's not wrong all the time. He just isn't.
Not all the time.
So I got a question. Like you brought up Ignatieff before, and I vaguely remember that time. I did not care near as much about politics at that time, but that was another one where somebody came back to the country to supposedly save the Liberals, ran them down to pretty much non-party status, if I recall.
that's
And
right.
he was
And
like,
that-
so.
And so like that was
no.
another situation. Like what was the climate like at that time? Obviously now, we got bad Orange Man, whatever.
Just to
It
jump
was a
in
bit
on the
different because-
gun side, Ignatieff would have been it, and so would Dion. They were both. One of them was like ban all handguns. The other one was ban all semi-autos.
Well, I was
And
thinking
that's what
more
they were
like the
running on.
climate leading up to the election where they got basically completely wiped out. Was it kind of the similar thing where, hey, that looked
No.
like that there was a chance, or no, they were just down the whole
So,
time?
Jack Layton's the wild card you're missing. In the
Yeah.
when Ignatieff got decimated and he just destroyed the Liberal Party, it was largely because Stephen Harper was a powerhouse. He is. I don't love Stephen Harper as prime minister. Dude didn't do shit, but like for us as gun owners, but like he was a good politician. He was smart. He was a great economist who got us through the recession. And then he found his foil in Jack Layton, who created the Orange Wave that killed the Liberal Party.
They went from 36 seats to 103.
Yeah. And I think that's where Ignatieff suffered. He's a smart guy. Like he's super smart, obviously. Like you don't teach at Cambridge, Oxford, and Harvard unless you're a smart guy. But he got outflanked. You can't win a war on two fronts. And I think that's where he lost. And I think that's what, like, obviously, if Jagmeet Singh was decent, competent, like, what word do you want to use? If he wasn't absolute shit,
he's awful.
Conservatives would be looking at a majority right now, but he is absolute shit. They're looking at 5 seats, 7 seats. Like, they're going to win their stalwart ridings and nothing else. And I will say in this regard, because of guns, not because of guns, but because the attitude they have towards issues like guns is why they're going to get destroyed. Like in Jack Layton's day, when he won 100+ seats, the NDP was a rural party. They represented farmers, workers, blue collar people. The NDP does not represent that today.
Jack wasn't driving around in Maserati.
Jack was firing a C7 at some point, I think.
Jack was going to massage parlors.
Yes, well, that's true.
Different ballgame, but relatable. So I think Jagmeet Singh has got to go down in history as one of the worst politicians in Canadian history. I just don't. There will be books written about how he killed a massive party. Like here in BC, our government is the NDP, and what always blows my mind is that it's one of the few parties where it's the same. Because we had the BC, like here in BC, we had the BC Liberals and we had the BC NDP. The BC Liberals were their own entity, totally distinct from the federal Liberals. The BC NDP does not. They have the same bank account as the federal NDP. It's one party. And yet somehow, even with all of this foundational strength, Jagmeet Singh has fucked it up. Like, that is mind-bogglingly bad. Like, it is, like, you got the golden ticket and you flushed it down the toilet, is what he's done. It's bizarre.
Well, I mean, people vote NDP and then they get the Liberals. So I think a lot of NDP people are just like, why should we vote for the NDP? We get the Liberals. Why not just cut out the middleman and just vote Liberal? Because the Liberals went so far left. They just, like, what's the difference?
Last time. Yeah.
Last time right.
This time they've swung right, and like voters have just, I don't know, abandoned the left wing entirely. They're voting liberal, a more conservative Liberal Party that's enacting conservative economic policies, and they've just given up on the NDP entirely.
So, but I think you've also got to be a bit critical of the Conservatives too, because when you look at that Overton window, we can all say the Liberals shifted far left. There was a very distinct window of time under Justin Trudeau where you could say the Liberals went far left, the NDP went extremely far left, and the Conservatives would have been smart to capture that centrist vote. Like, there's no getting around that. Like, you had the opportunity to go pragmatism, centrism, everything right of where the Liberals are is what the Conservatives should have done. And I think they did to a degree, but they're not doing that now in the campaign. And I don't understand it, to be quite honest. Like, guns are always the canary in the coal mine. Like, governments will shift harder on guns in a more significant way than they will in most policy issues. And I don't understand why, if we are the canary in the coal mine, I've brought this up for like a year plus, we have not seen the Conservatives take hold of this issue even. They've not taken ownership of it. They've not allowed themselves to define gun ownership in Canada. And I don't think, like, I will criticize the NDP and the Liberals, but I don't think the Conservatives are exempt from being criticized on this, because, like, if they're like Aaron O'Toole, you go back, what, 3 years, 2 years, whenever it was, like, the dude got raked over the coals for legalizing the AR-15. We are now facing a reality where the 50-plus voter the Liberals are relying on are thinking that we're going to be invaded. And yet, somehow, in that situation, the Conservatives are losing on guns. Like, if you think your country's going to be invaded, you'd want a gun.
Yep.
That's pretty
That's what
simple.
The Eastern Europeans did.
Yeah, like, Russia invades Ukraine. Ukraine hands out a $250,000 AKs the next day. And I don't know about you guys, but, like, in my experience, talking to people who don't necessarily have conservative standpoints, the one consistent thing is when they say about, oh, I'm worried about annexation, the second sentence is, so how do I get a gun?
Yeah.
Because if you think your country's going to be invaded, you want a gun. It's so simple. And that the Conservatives are not pursuing this, like I said, as a canary in the coal mine, a signal. It's bizarre. Like, I don't get it. Like, we're looking at the Conservatives losing an election that will be decided on nationalism.
Wild, right?
Just weird.
It's if there was ever an election that Conservatives win, it would be about nationalism, security, safety, defense, having a gun, and they're losing on this stuff. And I don't think they don't deserve to be exempted from criticism on this. Like, they're fucking this up.
Yeah, I would agree. I've been very frustrated over the last couple of years because, like, Pierre isn't afraid to own it to a certain degree, right? Like, he hasn't been O'Toole. He hasn't wavered in that stance, which has been refreshing. But you're absolutely right. They haven't owned it. They haven't framed it that way. It also really annoys me that nobody has framed it. Like, nobody's framed it against Carney being like, hey, so you want to take an $8 billion, income generating industry that employs tens of thousands of people in, hundreds of small businesses and regulates a community that is of the safest, most regulated people in the country. You want to take that, turn it into maybe a $500 million industry, put tens of thousands of people out of work, destroy hundreds of small businesses at a time where our economy is suffering. Aren't you the economist?
For political points.
For political points, you want to do that? Like, and no one's asked him that question, and it pisses me off. No one from the Conservative Party has framed it that way, and it pisses me off because there are vectors of attack for this that work for them, and they've used none of them.
The thing that annoys me about the whole gun thing with the Conservatives, and I mean, Pierre has been good about saying, I'm going to reverse all this crap and we're not banning guns that are like Hollywood scary guns. We're not doing any of that garbage. But if you just do, and this annoyed me with Harper, make common sense gun stuff and not liberal common sense, actual rational, logical, common sense gun laws. Nobody who was going to vote for you is not going to vote for you because that. Any of the people that are annoyed because, oh my God, the streets are whatever, they weren't going to vote for you anyway. So just do the stuff, do the right thing, do the logical thing, and the stuff that makes sense, and screw the consequences because there aren't going to be any.
Call it the right thing. Call it the right thing. Say you're doing the right thing for this huge segment of the population that have done nothing wrong. There hasn't been like that, I don't know. There's a lot of us. I sincerely hope that we can there's enough of us to actually swing things in a very real way if we are actually all motivated. But we come back to what Adriel was talking about. There's a lot of 50+ gun owners who are like, you know, my bolt action will be fine. My pump gun will be fine. I'm not conceiving of a world where they call my lever gun a semi-automatic style firearm that is rapid fire capable and therefore needs to be prohibited on those grounds. Like, they're not seeing that. So on that note, just to bring this back for a second, what is the doom and gloom? What do we foresee if the worst comes to pass? If any of those folks out there listening to us tonight who have those stance that maybe the liberals are the right people, Carney's the right guy, what's the consequences of that? Let's go down that rabbit hole
on
for a
guns.
minute.
Yeah, what
Yeah, on
specifically
guns.
what do you think he'll do first, Dan?
Yeah.
I don't know. First, I think ultimately that review of firearms classification clause that they mentioned on March 7th will be a thing. And I expect that what they will do is take the gun bans that were instituted by OIC, so AR-15s, VZ-58s, you name it, and I think they will enshrine that legislatively. They will say if a gun is semi-automatic and can accept a detachable magazine, it's prohibited. And for those listening that don't understand, like the bans we have had have been by name. So they have said you own brand X, model Y, that's illegal. What I'm saying that they will do is they will transition that into legislation saying instead of brand X, model Y, the characteristics of the gun you own make it illegal. So it's not about what you own specifically. It will be about the capabilities of what you can own. So they will just say if you have a semi-automatic rifle that is with a detachable mag, that will be illegal. I think that will be, I don't even need to say anything. That's gonna be the thing. Like they've said it. That's what the whole March 7th press conference was. It was they're going to do this. This isn't prognostication or opinion. They have literally said we're going to do this. So that will be something they do. What it means down the road for gun owners is that our lifestyle will change. There will be no more competition shooting. The idea of plinking, having fun with guns, going to the range and shooting, that'll be over. The guns you can own will be guns that the government decides are acceptable for hunting. Semi-automatic will be gone. You'll have bolt action rifles, lever action rifles, shotguns. I think, who knows? Maybe like your standard tube-fed mag shotgun will still be legal. I think that would be the case, but box-fed shotguns will probably be gone. Because the legislation that they've said they want to write would ban those. Handguns are gone. They've already been gone, so they won't be coming back.
Well, I think what could happen on those is they could stop issuing ATTs. That's what they did with prohib handguns.
Yep.
Originally, everyone got grandfathered in, and then all of a sudden, the ATTs stop. Now
I don't even
stay at home.
I'll be honest, I don't even care. Like I don't think it's over. Like you look, like I always look longer term. Like I think that's a big thing that our community has as a failing is not looking longer term.
Mhm.
The issuance of ATTs is superfluous. We are the last generation of handgun owners in Canada right now by law. The end. There's no caveats. That's my opinion. No, we are. If you own a handgun in Canada right now, you are the last Canadian who will own that handgun. Period. You can't give it to someone. You will die and it will be shredded. That's it. There's no third option. And that's where, ATTs, I don't give a shit what Cardi does with ATTs. We are the end. I have handguns. I will be the last person by law to own the handguns I own. I don't, and if you ask if he wins, well, I will be the last person to own these guns. The end. Like I've worked with museums. I've worked on historical projects where I have come across guns that have been owned by people during the prohibitions of the 60s, 70s, 90s, you name it. And these are now historical artifacts.
Well, I
and
think
it's weird to now think I'm that guy.
Yeah, there's something to be said there, Dan. These, like, once this legislation sticks and sticks for long enough, the possibility of it being repealed like drops to zero.
Yeah.
Right now, with this election, Pierre Poilievre says he's going to reverse it. He's going to reverse C-21, ban on handguns and the OICs. If it sticks in for another 4 years and the Conservatives have to run on this in 4 years, it's probably not going to be that sexy of an issue. They're probably not going to want to run on it because that's the way it's been for the last 4 years.
I'll be honest, this is my biggest frustration is eventually it's going to come around. Like, I think it might not be 4 years, it might be 10, it might be 8, whatever. Eventually, I think we will probably reach a point, especially with 3D printing, where gun control is no longer practical. And people would go, yeah, like, let's just light the fire on this arms industry and let's go back to the way it was. It's going to happen eventually.
Yep.
But that doesn't make me feel better because it just feels like, so for now, we all have to suffer. The industry will die. All of us will have significant changes in our lifestyle and our hobbies. So that in a dozen years, someone comes along and goes, so if you could 3D print a Glock, why are we banning 1911s? Because that will be eventually what someone says. Like in 2015, Justin Trudeau won an election because he was going to legalize pot. My dad would have died thinking pot will never be legal because that was the world he grew up in, right? Things are cyclical, and that's where I think like guns are the same argument where people will come around and go like, yeah, this the war on guns is the same as the war on drugs. It doesn't make sense. It's a waste of money.
Well,
I
if
just
gun
wish we
crime
could
keeps
get there
going up,
now.
then yeah, probably.
Well, it will. That's the thing. It will, and like I was saying in our preamble, I've had this conversation with many MPs, my MP a few times. It's like I work in the film industry, licensed armor. I've got the special, all the good licenses to not really lose anything. But I've also gotten to see how things are coming along in like the fabrication world and the like tabletop 3D metal printing. We're like 5 years away from that being something you're doing in the garage. And at that point, it's a moot point. Like it is a moot point when you hit there. And you're absolutely right. By the time like 10 years from now, we're going to be into like Cyberpunk 2077 levels of people just homemaking their own whatever they want. And I've brought this up with my MP and with several MPs. The biggest danger in targeting our community, this community of self-regulating, proudly law-abiding, citizens who follow the rules regardless of if they're stupid or not, like targeting directly us and only us and saying, screw you, you followed all the rules for years. Yeah, get fucked. We're just going to hit you again and again and again until you go away. What that actually means in real terms is that those people are just going to stop following the laws. Like I have encountered more than a few people already using full cap mags because they're like, well, apparently the laws only matter to me, so they don't matter to me anymore. And that's just the start of it. In 10 years, when you tell that same guy right now who popped a rivet out of his magazine that he can go 3D print himself a machine gun that he can have and go play around with in the bush, and there's not a thing they can do about it, that guy's gonna do it, and there'll be nothing stopping him because you've already deleted the best part of the control against that, which is a self-regulating, probably law-abiding community.
I like the idea of people being able to 3D print machine guns and go play with them in the woods because I can't see any reason that shouldn't actually be okay.
I agree with you, but I'm just saying that, the gun control debate will be a moot one at some point in our lifetimes. Completely agree. We are rapidly on our way there.
It's pretty close. Like if you look at the handguns that are seized in Ontario that are crime guns, like how's Canadian gun control working? Well, pretty good. It must be if it's like 90% of the guns are just smuggled in from the US. But also, what's the point of adding more on at this point? Well, none.
I had the discussion with somebody about that because they're talking about illegal handguns and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, do you realize that handguns have been registered in Canada since 1934? Mm-hmm. So you've got 90 years, literally 90 years worth of proof that it doesn't work. And you're like, let's register more stuff. Literally 90 years.
I mean,
Like,
even
what more
from the
proof do you
basis
need
of,
it doesn't work?
Our first gun control acts were based on like people on racism. Like,
Yep.
Louis Riel did the whole Northwest Rebellion, and the government went, "Well, yeah, I don't think you guys should have guns anymore because this is a bit scary." Like the first, as a historian, again, I'm not a super partisan guy, but I love guns and I love history. The first use of a Gatling gun in a combat situation was with Louis Riel fighting the Canadian government. The Canadian government, no, you can't do that no more. That's too much gun. We're not letting you have those. And Canada just keeps going, oh yeah, let's just keep doing that. They'll just keep saying you can't have them. That's gonna work. Like,
that's one of the things that pisses me off. And I have this discussion with people. If gun control works, quote unquote, like let's say in 2023, let's say after all the gun bans, there's a tiny little blip down in crime. If you're in favor of gun control, they'll say, see, gun control works. Doesn't matter what caused the blip. Doesn't matter. They have no proof. If crime goes up, they'll say, we need more gun control. So gun control is the only government policy that I can think of that relies strictly upon its own failure to promote more of it. It doesn't work, so we need to keep going because we haven't gone hard enough.
Pissed me off so much because I think I've said it for years, and I felt like I was donning a tinfoil hat when I first said gun control is a liberal winner, because as long as they keep tilting at the windmill of gun control and ignoring actual crime, they will both find the inducement for voters to support more gun control while also enacting more gun control. It's this Ouroboros level of just stupid fuckery. I don't know how else to put it. Like, it is people politics, are shooting each other with guns, so we're gonna not let you have guns. But the people that are shooting themselves with guns are not people that have guns legally anyways. So it's just this. It is, like Adriel said, it's politics. It's pure politics, and it's super duper frustrating because, like I said, I am not a conservative. I am not a liberal. I just am a dude who likes guns and wants to be left alone.
Yep.
And yet I am stuck in this. I did an interview with CBC where, like, how far gone is the liberal rhetoric on gun control? When I could do an interview with CBC and the CBC interviewer goes, so gun control doesn't seem like it's working.
Yeah.
And I go, like, is this real life? Like, is that, you just
is this a serious question right now?
I mean, Jesus, let's go back 15 years. Let's revisit this. Like,
go back more. Like, even, you mentioned it. Like, we've had bands in the 60s, 70s, and 90s. The 90s one pisses me off personally, because my grandfather had a few pieces that I wish I owned today. He had a Liberator pistol.
Cool.
I've held one. They're really rare and neat, and a real lesson in not giving in to that gun control thing too. If you want to talk about historically important firearms, but I don't know, man. Like, I feel you right now, Dan, because I've very much that same energy, and it's really frustrating because you feel like you're taking crazy pills a little bit, being able to have these conversations with people like, no, gun control isn't working, hasn't worked. Like Dave said, we've had the better part of 90 years of handgun registration, and doesn't seem to be stopping anybody from shooting each other in the streets with illegal handguns that, surprise, they didn't get legally in Canada. Like, it's absolutely wild.
It's the war on drugs.
Yep.
Like, I was young once. I still like to think that I kind of am-ish, even though I turned 40 last month, so I feel a bit older. But I always looked at, Ronald Reagan, the war on drugs. Well, that's a stupid fucking idea. Like, what a dumb thing. Like, I got when Trudeau ran in 2015 on legalizing marijuana, I went, this kind of makes sense. Like, yeah, if it's making money for black market people and criminal enterprise, we should probably bring it into the realm of legal regulation. I think that now I'm going to sidetrack, but I think that our drug legalization regime has been sidetracked by the fact that it's been kind of screwed up. But I don't understand why the same people who are like, yeah, I'm going to vote for Justin Trudeau because he's going to legalize drugs, are the same people going, oh, I'm going to vote for Mark Carney because he's going to ban guns. Like, what? This is insane. Like, like you said, crazy pills. Like, if someone can sell you pot, and that's something we should legalize to bring it into the realm of regulation, why is the same government saying, hey, you who owns guns, which, again, I'll be super blunt, you who owns guns, we don't know you own. You own a VZ58, you own an M14. We don't know you have them.
Yep.
They're probably just stuffed in your car trunk somewhere, whatever. We're going to make those illegal. That's going to help everyone. Those are mutually exclusive logical arguments to me.
It is because people have people have weird blinders on when it comes to guns, and it doesn't matter because it's guns. You're seizing private property, but it's guns. I'm okay with that.
But I think they're gonna
but it's okay.
It's gonna
guns.
Hurt a lot of people. I'll be blunt. Like, I think that's where
they don't care.
You know.
See, this is the other danger. This is so I'm going to explain this one real quick because this is the real danger of of the like divisiveness level that we've encountered here, because it's new. Like, we've become properly tribal in a real way, and the danger is in that division and that complete erosion of any sort of middle ground where we conversate together. Is we other real bad, where the other guy. Well, and then with the second you other, well, that's you dehumanize him. Fuck him. Don't care about what happens to that guy. Nothing matters to that person. He's my enemy. He is a problem. He is not a person. All of his thoughts, feelings, or emotions are bad. And guns, and generally gun owners get immediately othered into that category because gun ownership tends to, go hand in hand with conservative folks, conservative values. That tends to be the sort of logical pairing. And so it's real easy to other gun owners, and it's real easy to sit there and be like, yeah, screw you, you're getting your toys taken away. Oh, you lost your business. Oh, that's so sad for you. And it's wild that these people, and again, I'm calling out all the folks on the left that really, really annoy me, because I, by all rights, should be in a lot of these categories, and I am. Like, I'm a blue-haired homo, makes a living in the arts, and I, I'm a member of all of these groups, and all of them demand a level of not just respect, but they have an expectation. Sorry.
Bayesians will bow before the
it's not just that.
Religion.
There's definitely a religious aspect to it there, but there's also this expectation of a respect for their feelings, and you're like, oh, okay, so I'm completely blanking on the synonym for the word I'm looking for. I'm grasping at it, but anyway, so you have this expectation that other people are going to have this respect for your feelings, your needs, and all of this, but you can other the other side immediately, and it just becomes a race to the bottom, right?
Reciprocity.
It's bizarre. I have a degree in African women's literature. That's my academic history. I literally studied African women's lit. It was awesome. I would never shy away from it. It's fantastic, fascinating, and I think that's where politically parties are losing the plot. I think that historically speaking, you're absolutely correct. The gun ownership is aligned with conservative values, etc. But I think moving forward is very different. Statistically speaking, the biggest growth in gun ownership has occurred in people under 35.
Yep.
In the last 10 years.
A lot of women too.
Those same people have repeatedly polled as extremely disenfranchised because you can't afford a fucking home. It's really hard to feel enfranchised when you can't see a home in your future.
Yep.
And when you see those Venn diagrams overlap, it's very easy to go, well, so the future of gun ownership in this country is very different from the historical record of gun ownership.
Yep.
Like gun owners, I think in 2010 is the year that I would say that's the inflection point.
Yep.
In 2010 and earlier, gun owners were those, for lack of old boys.
Yep.
Old dudes. Yep.
No need to explain, just
Old
the
white
old
men.
boys. After 2010, it's become a whole different matzo ball. Like, and that's where I say, so I've been doing it professionally for 14 years. It's been fascinating to watch. And I'm not like, I watch it. I do think of myself as an observer. But if you go back 20 years, when I was first talking about the long gun registry at my local gun club in Richmond, because I was born in Prince Rupert, but I grew up in Vancouver, so I hear you. At the Vancouver Gun Club there, the Shotgun Club, talking about the first effort to get rid of the LGR when Harper had a minority. And the majority of gun owners I talked to said, no, we need to keep it because the registry is beneficial to solving crime. They brought up like these weird CSI references, like, well, when someone's shot, they'll find the casing and the firing pin. I don't like, no, that's not it, but whatever. Like, at the end of the day, most people I talked to were in favor of the system we had. That's not the case today. Like, if you had told me 10 years ago that self-defense with a handgun would be a reason people wanted guns, and I don't mean like one person, like there's been op-eds written in major market newspapers about I should have the ability to get a handgun so I can defend myself. If you said that 10 years ago, I would have gone, you're fucking nuts. Because I was that guy 10 years ago going, well, I mean, it's reasonable that if you have a gun and someone's attacking you, to use the gun to stop the person that is attacking you. And I was called crazy. I was the guy who's went, oh, that's no, we don't own guns for self-defense again. That's insane. And those are the people that supported the long gun registry at the gun club. And now it's normal. Like, a ton of people are getting gun licenses because they're scared and they want a gun to protect themselves. I'm gobsmacked at the shift. And I don't think, the liberals are obviously not aware of this, but I'm more critical of the conservatives in that, like, I have sent so many emails to that party saying, hey, you guys, you got to recognize, like, you are responding to the gun issue like it's 2019, 2018, 2017. I'm not sure, but you're certainly not responding to it like it's 2025. And you're certainly not getting ahead of the curve. Like, if you're in politics, the OODA loop, you always want to be ahead of the curve. You always want to be one step ahead. There's no one in conservative politics, and Pierre Poilievre inclusive, he is 5 years behind. He doesn't get it. And I don't like it. And that makes it more frustrating that we're having this discussion. We're talking about whether or not we should even be able to own guns. We're talking about, oh, well, you can have if Carney wins, you might be able to own a lever action rifle. At the same time as a ton of people my age and younger feel like they should be able to own guns because it is key to their personal safety. Yeah. And it's insane. There's no overlap. It's just these two things are happening at the same time, and I don't really know what to make of it.
It's driven me crazy. I shoot with almost like exclusively a bunch of LGBT folk, right? I've got great little group of like queer gun owners, and we're all real annoyed. It's been really, really interesting seeing like a lot of folks that kind of look like me who have similar feelings in that regard. And like for myself, like I got into firearms in a big way. Like I grew up with them. I'm from Saskatchewan, but like I grew up with them, but I got into them in a big way after I got gay bashed when I was like 19. And like that was my big motivation, and realizing that like in Canada, just having that conversation about self-defense with a firearm was a big no-no, that long ago. And yeah, we are starting to have that conversation now because we're also having conversations about like 3, 4, 5 guys breaking into houses with guns, executing their owners over keys to cars. Like, that's a reality in our country that you're 100% right. We do actually need someone within the political sphere to acknowledge and reckon. I'm really, really tired of like all of the political, everybody in all levels of politics just ignoring that, like pretending it's us. It's not happening. It's not a thing. No, people, I can show you videos. It happens weekly. And so no, we do need to change the conversation. And there are a whole bunch of people that look like me and who would be excellent, targets for that centrist, narrative that aren't even being pursued by anybody. You know what I mean? And it really, for like a lot of folks like myself, it really ends up like, a lot of people call me a single issue voter or get, really shocked. They're like, how could you support the conservatives? I'm like, well, I mean, it's not that hard. The other parties are crazy, but also still not feeling like there is the level of support that there should be from the conservatives.
Oh, same. Yeah, I don't, like, I'm not in the LGBT world, but I have families who are. But I feel the same thing. I don't feel supported. Like,
no.
Like, I'll be totally blunt. I have had more interactions in the last 10 years with NDP MPs than I have with a conservative. And I've reached out to the conservative to say, hey, I want to help. I've been doing this a long time. I'm a gun comms guy. That's my thing. I'd love to help. And I can't get an email back. But I have heard back from the NDP. And at one point, I mean, fuck, I had more interaction with the Liberals. Like when Ralph Goodale was the Minister of Public Safety, I had the cell phone number of his firearms policy guy, and we called each other probably monthly. And now it's nothing. Like I said, I can't get a fucking reply. They're very bizarre on this issue. And that's where I think Natalie Provost's candidacy is so interesting, because I totally understand why the conservatives would not want to talk to me. I get why they wouldn't want to talk to Tracy. Like, we're all gun people. It's very polarizing. You align with us, you talk to us. It makes you
NRA, blah,
one of us. You know, the meme, one of us. But I struggle with squaring that circle with the notion that Ralph Goodale's staff called me. And it's diving deeper into the partisanship around guns instead of viewing it as a larger issue around public safety. Like you said, you're not a single issue voter. I don't want to be a single issue voter. I really wish I could not be a single issue voter. That would be the best. But they've made it such an issue. Both sides, Liberals, Bloc, NDP, Conservatives, everyone has made this into such a hyper-partisan issue that what else are we supposed to do? Like, I do want to have a company. I want my magazine to not die in its 15th year. That would be awesome. So I got to vote a certain way. And I don't, like, it's kind of bullshit. Like, everyone should just take it back a step, view all of this stuff holistically. Like, when I live in Kelowna, I live in downtown Kelowna. When we moved here, there's a trail called the Rail Trail. It's a former CN rail bed that serviced the industry in the north end of Kelowna. There was a family of deer that lived on this trail. We walked it every day. It was like a major selling feature of the house. You're down the block from the rail trail. Yesterday, they fenced in a homeless camp on the rail trail. And I have been pursuing a guy on Facebook who stole a multi-tool out of my car and is selling it on Facebook. He lives in that camp, and now he's fenced it. Like, this is like what normal people are dealing with. Like, this isn't a gun thing. It's just, he stole my fucking Victorinox Swiss tool out of my goddamn car, and I want it. He lives there. I know where he lives. I know his name. I can't get it because he won't reply. And now the whole friggin' thing is fenced in. And like, that's what normal Canadians are dealing with. And I don't understand why no party can just go, you know what? It doesn't matter how you feel about guns. This is fucked. We need to stop this. Like, this is insane. Like, I don't know anyone that cares about guns, realistically. Like, no one outside of this world, this community. No one gives a shit. You go to a coffee shop and say, I work in the gun industry. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was controversial. Like, when I first started Calibre up, it was our 3rd issue. I was driving the boxes of magazines from our printer to FedEx because we shipped them all through FedEx back then. And the lady at FedEx went, these are really heavy because a box of magazines is basically a box of wood. So it's heavy. And she goes, what's in here? I go, magazines. She goes, magazines about what? I said, oh, guns. And she went, well, it'd be a shame if these didn't get where they're going. And I went,
for real? Wow.
I'm going to pay you like $3,000 to get these where they're going. That's a bit unprofessional. So I don't appreciate that. That was controversial then. Now, I don't think anyone at FedEx gives a fuck. They would go, oh, guns? Okay, whatever.
Because I think part of the problem is the 90s, we, like Dustin said, you get othered. And we in the 90s, because I went through that. If you want to read some good books, The Politics of Panic, Registration Me Confiscation, and Observations on a One-Way Street. Read those books.
I think I have that book.
Do you? I kept these from the 90s because that was the first time I actually dealt.
No, I have a different one. I have this
one.
I
lost a foul.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Looks the
yeah.
same.
Where are those books from? Sorry, this is before my time, so I don't know.
So they are literally from Canada's the shooting organizations
of Canada.
Man, I love you have this. I have never seen anyone that's seen this before. I got it at an auction. This
really?
is amazing.
Yeah, I post these on CGN every so often when there's a gun ban.
It's hilarious. So people who haven't seen it, and for the people listening on the podcast, it's a book of basically charts and stuff that like the gun organizations in the 90s put out. They published this whole friggin' book about gun crime, whether or not gun control worked. They put this whole thing out. It's awesome. I cannot believe you are literally the first person I've ever seen who has one of these. That is awesome.
Are they still around? Or
these were published.
Copies are.
Yeah, I have it on PDF. Remind me, and I'll email you guys a copy. Of it.
Please
I
do.
wish it needs to come out. I think, and this is, I will say, since I've been so critical of the Conservatives in this whole thing, because they're the one party that will help us. This is something our organizations need to do. Like they got to go back to the grassroots and do this stuff again. Like I can buy a book at an auction that is 30 years old talking about what we need to do. And we're not doing this today. And it's
the exact same arguments. When you read this book, it is the exact same arguments from the exact same people that are currently banning our guns. And that's the crazy thing to me. It's the exact same arguments.
It's not. Because you guys are looking at this from a pragmatic point of view instead of from a political point of view. It doesn't matter if it works or not. There's a whole article from
Wendy Suk here. Like literally, this is a 30-year-old book.
Really, nothing has changed, eh?
No.
Like it is this. We are in time is a flat circle.
Yeah. The crazy thing
we're in the middle.
If you go back, I read a book. This is not gun related, but this is a segue. This is ties in. There's a book called The 10-Cent Plague, and I don't. If any of you guys read it,
no.
Great book. So The 10-Cent Plague is about the comic book bans of the 1930s, 40s, 50s. And there's a reason that you have Comic Code Authority on all your comics, because they basically banned all comic books back then because they were blaming them for youth violence.
Of course.
And if you take
I don't want to say I remember it, but I do remember hearing about it.
Great book. It's the exact same arguments, and the prohibition was the same thing. And like talking about banning rap music in the 80s, you just take any moral panic, banning absinthe, it was the exact same thing. You take any topic where there is a moral panic about it, and you just literally cut the word out of it and stick in guns or rock and roll or rap or Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, Harry Potter, for God's sakes. It is the exact same argument. And when you look at the people making the arguments, it's the same damn people. And it has always been thus. And it's all bullshit.
Someone please think of the children.
Right. Reverend Lovejoy's wife clutching her pearls. That is exactly it. So I do hope, Dan, that one day people are like, this is bullshit and this is stupid, because it is.
Maybe one day. I think you guys are.
I hope.
Like, even let's take that book. Let's make it available to everyone. I think most people wouldn't read it. They're just apathetic to gun control, like Dan said, right? Most people don't give a shit. They don't care about gun control.
Well, it doesn't affect most people, right?
Yeah, they don't
most
care.
people get is the bad stuff.
Is that not?
Yeah.
Is that not empowering as well? Like, as gun owners,
as long as you
say the majority of the electorate doesn't give a shit about gun control, that would be something that 2015 gun owners would go, yeah, that's awesome. That's what we're voting for. We don't think people should care. I don't understand.
Political.
Yeah, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's that it is an asymmetric battlefield at this point. Gun control only helps liberals. It kills the conservatives. It kills gun owners as well. But I also think
kills minority youth on the streets of Toronto as well.
Though we won't do anything about
that. People, I honestly think that gun. I've said it numerous times. Everyone has probably seen it. I've said concealed carry is inevitable. We don't have the police. Like, there's no world in which Canada can. So crime is rising, which is a new thing. Like, for those that don't know, I came to guns because I studied forensic psychology. I grew up in an anti-gun household in Vancouver. Didn't really shoot for fun, you name it. I studied forensic psychology and recidivism, which required a term paper on various things, and I didn't want to write about domestic violence, so I wrote about guns. And in that world, you could see that gun crime was decreasing in Canada and the US. Gun crime is now increasing in Canada, which is an aberration, historically speaking, because it's actually, I wish more people understood how bizarre it is that gun crime is increasing. That's not normal. In most Western developed nations, crime reduces with wealth, stability, safety, you name it. Mm-hmm. Canada is not doing that, which is
we don't have any of those things anymore. That's why. It's like there's a
I can't say that because I'm watching this stuff happen, and I can only look at the stats and go, yeah, gun crime is increasing, and I can reach the same conclusions, but I'm not going to say that's why, because correlation, causation, etc. I want to be, again, I try and be very nonpartisan on this stuff, and I can just go, wow, gun crime is going up. That's weird, like super, super, super weird. If gun crime keeps going up, which no government, like this government, I'll be honest, if Pierre Poilievre wins, gun crime will probably still keep going up, because I don't see them shifting things where it will start to go down.
No.
If we consider that gun crime is rising, and we consider that gun crime is likely to continue rising, and then we also take it as fact that we cannot hire more police officers, we don't have the available capital, people don't want that job, the salary sucks. It's like military recruitment. Like, we're not there. Like, we are not looking at a New York style broken windows, a metric ton of cops overnight. We don't have the court systems. We don't have the prison systems. We don't have bail reform. That if all of these things are true, then eventually we will arrive at a situation where a court of some ilk says, well, the Crown can't protect you because we don't have the cops, we don't have the judges, we don't have the police, there's nothing we can do. So the only solution is you die or you have a gun. Like, I don't know what other reality there is, that we are going to arrive at a situation where Canadians get concealed carry because there's no other option. Like, it's not that I want it. I've said it before, like it's inevitable. I just don't know what. Again, I don't know. There's no other option. Like
I follow your train of thought, and I agree that is the direction that we are heading. Less safety. You know, the safe Canada that was yours in my childhood is certainly no longer the case. That said, I would agree with where that train ends if we lived in a free country, but we don't.
I think people will just start carrying guns.
Well, that's where I was kind of going.
Happen. That will absolutely.
I absolutely agree that carrying will happen.
Yes,
but it won't be legally.
No,
it is happening right now. I will say that. Not with guys that are legally owning guns, but
legally or not. Let's just say like El Jefe there.
Yeah.
Are we? If one prominent person gets attacked, we are one prominent person away from having concealed carry legally. Agree? Disagree?
I disagree.
Like if Justin Bieber gets attacked in
somebody
Toronto
went after
and goes,
somebody went
if
after
I had a gun.
Somebody went after Drake's house and shot the place up and injured his guard. And we still don't have concealed carry in Canada.
Drake's house got shot up?
Yeah,
dude. Yeah, two years ago.
It was it's going to take a lot more than that, because now you still like. So with the current gun bans and from the last 5 years, that's one thing to try and change public perception and buy-in, but to get public perception and buy-in on concealed carry, and now all of a sudden we're making personal defense and we're carrying for the purpose of personal defense. The country has to go so far the other way in perception for that to ever happen.
That's I will push back on that, because I think you're so let's say Polyev wins. So C21 regulated ATCs up to the federal level. So now the commissioner of the RCMP has to approve an ATC. If the federal government shifts and C21's withdrawn or redacted, changed, whatever, then I get where you're coming from. I think you're totally correct. That's not the Canadian mentality, but what is the overarching Canadian mentality is I've got mine, so fuck you is really the ethos of Canada these days. If Danielle Smith's CFO, who we all love, Terry Bryant, says, yeah, we can totally issue an ATC. You do it. Like C21 is withdrawn. Terry Bryant says, here's your ATC. If someone in Calgary gets an ATC, I think someone in Toronto goes, I want one too.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why I can't have one.
Oh, if I find out people get issued, I'm applying.
Where the provincial issue becomes a federal issue, where if one province's people are told you can have an ATC, Ontario's people will get very angry they can't. Yeah. And that's where it becomes a national thing.
That, I believe, would be the path if what you're saying comes to fruition, is all of a sudden now the provinces can authorize that and say, yes, you are a resident of this province. Well, that's correct me if I'm wrong. That's wilderness carry and very but we're talking just general public. Like, okay, all of a sudden, yeah, Terry Bryant, you can now authorize to carry in the city, whatever.
No, the ATCs are all under provincial CFO, because it's not just so wilderness carry is one thing, but like you got to think about armored car guards. Their ATCs are issued by provincial CFO because of their job. So there are laws, and that's where I got into it with a guy online, where there are 3 requirements that were legislatively founded, where it was you have to be what was it? Oh man, now I'm going back. It was you've got to be if it's not job related, like wilderness or armored car, that you were worried about your own safety and the police couldn't protect you. Is basically, there was a third one, but those are the 2 big ones. But they weren't, it came down into a legal situation where there wasn't a comma. It wasn't that you need to have both of them. It was just
either or.
And I know a guy who got an ATC in Vancouver, actually, because he was involved in a criminal case. The North Vancouver police said, we cannot adequately protect you. This is after gangbangers broke into his house and tried to kill him. So, some precedents there.
Yeah.
But they said we could park a police car outside your house, and we can't guarantee that you'll be safe.
Yeah.
And that was all that was required. And I think there's at this point a precedence where a premier like Danielle Smith could totally say crime is on the rise, police recruitment's on the decline. We can't guarantee your safety. So if you want to carry one, you meet the requirement. Therefore, our CFO will sign off. And that's where I go. If she signs off, it's open season. Like everyone else will want it because.
Well, I think Alberta would be the leader in that. Like it would happen in Alberta, and then I think there's still some more stuff to happen because I think if it was that easy, Terry Bryant would already have done that.
Well, they need C21 reversed,
and they need a government that would support that, right, on the federal level too, right? That
but I mean,
allows
again, to be totally blunt, Terry Bryant has said she would do this. Like,
oh yeah, no, she would.
Oh yeah, I absolutely believe it.
And Danielle Smith have both said if we had the legal ability, we would do this.
Yeah.
And that's where I go, like, it's inevitable because you've got, again, you go back 15 years when I started this. If you had said concealed carry is going to be a thing, I would have been like, you're fucking insane. No, it's not. And now my next door neighbor is going, provincially, we would do this. If you would let us, we would do this.
Yeah.
So she totally would. And they would lead the charge for sure. But that wouldn't be where it ended. Like people in PEI would go, fuck, if some guy in Calgary have a gun, why the fuck can't I? Like it's very normal.
I could see it
being Quebec would still be left out.
Quebec would just go, we want our own country, and the rest of us would go, okay,
fine.
Like,
50%.
That's
That said, I do love Blanchet. I love the Bloc. I love Quebec. I love Blanchet. He is the best politician Canada's got right now.
I'm rooting for them.
Y'all want to leave? I won't stop you.
My theory is if the Bloc ran a full slate of candidates in Alberta and promised to leave, they might actually win.
I'm in Kelowna, BC. I would vote for that fucking guy.
Right?
He's
pretty good.
Awesome.
Yeah. Like, Danielle Smith was saying something today about working with Quebec on some provincial jurisdictions.
Well, it's because Quebec has done the best job, like enforcing the provincial, like what has been allocated as far as provincial powers. Quebec has done the best job being like, these are our powers. The federal government will never take these from us under any circumstances. And because Alberta's been kind of browbeaten into giving up a lot of those powers, whether they like it or not. So like Danielle Smith's like, okay, let's talk to the ones that have been enjoying all of this. Let's and brilliant, absolutely brilliant. my big, I like where your head is at, Dan. I can definitely see that train a little bit more clearly. We still need the Conservatives to win, which is again why I am in 100% support of the Bloc, because like the Bloc need to just decimate the Liberals in Quebec to make that possible. And
how can they not? Like when you're talking about Carney, who doesn't even go to the French language, like the TVA, doesn't speak French. He shrugs off questions, and he kind of like, what a trash campaigner. Like he's so bad at this. Where, like, I think that Chandra was a compromised candidate. Like the dude met with Modi like a month before his election. And I'm sorry, but if you're a backbench MP from Canada and you somehow manage to sit down at a handshake meeting with Modi, one of the largest countries in the world, that's a lot to stomach. But they railroaded that guy because he wasn't giving due respect to the French language. And then out comes Carney going, do I need to answer this question in French too? Because I don't really want to. Like it's he's basically saying that. And like if he loses in Quebec, holy shit, I'll lose a lot of respect for Quebec. I don't speak French. I went to Quebec once. They insulted me. I respected the insult because, game, recognized game. But if he loses there, fuck me, I will lose a lot of respect for the sovereignty of that province.
I think
if he wins, if he does well there.
If he wins,
yes,
yeah.
I think.
Well, if he wins seats over the Bloc, I
Yeah.
will be very disappointed in the Quebec people.
The thing that he seems to be benefiting from, even there, and again, the Bloc especially. I think the Bloc and the NDP in the Lower Mainland are the two things that we will probably see shift closer to the campaign. Right, the NDP should not be that low in Vancouver. They just shouldn't. No matter how shitty a candidate that Singh is, and he's awful. They really need to get rid of him. They needed to axe him a long time ago. But nonetheless, logically, the Bloc's going to do better in Quebec closer to the actual election. It's one thing what you say to a pollster that has, and versus like Carney can't speak French, certainly not well, and he
speak English.
I know he's not going to do well in that when they do have the one French French debate. Pierre is going to steamroll over him. I'm hopeful that the Bloc does well, and I am hopeful that the NDP does well enough to split a lot of the vote that right now is going to the Liberal. But the things that the Liberal Party is benefiting from is that, again, the fear of the giant orange man, and the irony of that, like for Quebec people being like, yeah, well, I mean, if we don't vote for the person who's not going to sell us to America, then we won't have French. The irony is like, I truly believe if Carney wins, then Alberta will secede. If they don't secede by choice, the smartest thing the U.S. could do would be take Alberta and Saskatchewan. Just take the economic engine of the country, just excise it. The rest will fall. And I think that there would probably be enough Western alienation feels, especially in Alberta, and I know it's there in Saskatchewan. I know it is. It's still there heavily, that you could probably convince folks to vote that way. And if that happens, that's the end of the country anyway. That's the ball game. Quebec, maybe they'll get their own little country afterwards, but I don't know.
I think a lot about because I think the same. Like I don't know if Alberta will secede per se. But I can definitely say we're likely looking at a pretty big geographic divide. Yeah. Even if Alberta doesn't secede, there will be a big split. Because even here in BC, where people, because I always see the Western, it always kind of chaps my ass a bit. Like the Western people are like, oh, Alberta is the West. And I kind of go like, well, I'm a staunch BC guy. Like I was born and raised in BC. BC is the best. I love my province. We are the West. You can't further west. You end up in the ocean. So we are the West. Whenever Albertans, there's been a couple of guys in the gun industry that are from Manitoba that Adriel probably knows. And they go like, oh, Manitoba, we're the West. And I go like, no, you're not. No, you're really in the center.
Anywhere west of the center of the universe.
Literally in the center. When you get partway through the province, there's a great big memorial for Center of Canada. I saw it. I stopped and I got photos.
I've driven to Moose Jaw, and when I got there, I went, "This is not the West. Like it does not look like the West. There are no mountains. There's no ocean. This is not the West." But
well, yeah, that's the differentiation between the West, which is really the Prairies, and the West Coast, which is really BC.
Well, what you're saying is that the differentiation, like West and more West,
so to speak. Yeah, we can go with that.
West and West Plus. Are we
West Pro Max?
I feel to bring it back around. I think what a lot of people are losing in this political debate is that BC had a provincial election very recently.
Yep.
And the Conservatives almost won. It was a very conservative party. It was a very, very, very conservative party. This wasn't like a center right. This was a very decidedly right party.
And they were almost won nothing before.
Dude, it came within like hundreds of votes. Like hundreds of people decided that the NDP, like the alternative was the NDP, so it's very left-right split. But it was a very right party that almost won. And I think if I don't think Canadians will care, because ultimately the election will be decided in Ontario, and I I really, really hate that.
Yep.
I wish that maybe Ontario people cared that the way they vote may really, really change how half of the country looks at them. And I know that they'll look at BC and go, "Oh, well, you guys have an NDP," but no, it's not. Like, there's a lot of people that they will feel very ostracized.
I think the pendulum has swung so far to the left for so long, it is starting to swing the other way. And the harder you push something one way, the harder it comes back the other way.
I just wish the pendulum would stop swinging.
I
Like,
know.
maybe we could all just go like, "Hey, let's just hold this sucker in the center and
some
everyone's
stability.
That would be
Maybe
awesome.
we could all meet in the center, have some find some
Like around
common
Moose Jaw.
ground. Yeah, right around Moose Jaw. There's a lot of space for us all to hang out
There is.
around there and have a chat. So, being from exactly that region, I've definitely driven to Moose Jaw to go see a movie.
Well, people need to realize that whether you're left or whether you're right, the government's the enemy. So
Yes.
I mean, ultimately,
Well,
like
I think
people,
also,
the
I would
people
almost
are
go the
not your
opposite.
enemies.
I think I would say that, like, my biggest frustration in all of these years of being into guns and politics is that a lot of people don't want to recognize that people who have a different opinion on a certain policy, like guns, like I'll be very specific, Natalie Provost. She has a very different opinion from me on guns. I respect it. I get where she's coming from. I haven't been shot 4 times. I get it. But I think we both, I shouldn't say we both, because that's assigning to her something that I don't know. I want to make Canada better. I want my kids to be safer. I want to encounter less gun crime. I think she wants those same things. And I think that's what Canadians kind of need to come around on, is that we can have different ideas about how we get there, but that the people involved in the debate, the man in the arena, to use the stupid cliche, all want better. No one is involved in this, even with guns. Like, no one is invested in the gun debate in Canada because they want Canada to be worse.
Yeah.
They just aren't.
Yeah.
That's insane.
100%.
Like, our opponents, people who hate guns, who want us to have no guns, don't want Canada to be worse. They just have a different idea of how Canada will be better than we do. And I wish that our politicians, who are kind of the arbiters of us, because if we're on one side saying, "Hey, I have guns and we have a good system and I want to be able to shoot guns competitively," and all that kind of stuff, and our opponents are going, "You shouldn't be able to own guns," the politicians are in the middle, listening to both of us, being the arbiters of policy, should be able to reach that conclusion of, "Okay, so I've heard from both of you, and so here's our conclusion. You're going to have to register your handguns. You need to get a license. This is a good compromise." We've left that. I think that's the biggest detriment of gun ownership in the last 10 years that I've seen, is that even gun owners were proud of the system that we had 10 years ago, like legitimately proud.
Mhm.
Like, there were gun owners who friggin', and again, I was not that guy, but I argued with so many gun owners about the fact they're proud they have a gun license. And I used to go, "Well, that's bullshit. You shouldn't need a license." And they would go, "No, it's a good system. We've got this license and it's awesome. And I've got the background check, and that's why we don't have mass shootings." And that was the compromise between people like me who went, "You shouldn't need a license. Guns are a fundamental tool of self-reliance. You should totally be able to own one." And people that went, "No, we have this system of responsible gun ownership based on a license." We've left that behind. Now it's all just partisan bickering.
Well, it's emotional politics, and then it's not
Totally.
even about policy. Now it's
identity.
if
We used
you
to call
actually
it
want those
identity
guns and
politics.
you're fighting to keep those guns and do your sport shooting, now you're vilified for it.
You want children dead.
Yeah. Like, you are the enemy
No one
because you
does.
want to take
That's
your
what
gun
gets
to the
me.
range
No
and
one,
shoot.
like, no one wants no one wants anyone dead. Like, at the end of the day, we all just want less crime. And the
to
fact that
Dustin's
we
point,
can't
though, it's the
arrive at
othering.
that common point is insane. Like the fact that I can't go up, like I have met her. She was not super kind to me, but the fact that I can't go up to Natalie Provost and go, we want the same things. She would deny that. Is why we're broken.
Yeah.
Didn't the CCFR invite her to like a proper debate or something? That was like a thing before, right?
Yeah.
I remember that.
They offered to donate, I think it was 15 grand to a cause of a charity of her choice if they actually came to the debate. And she said no, because she would get destroyed. Like,
I met her during the C-71 Senate stuff. I actually shook her hand and said, I respect what you're doing because I think we both want a safer Canada. And she was not super kind. And that was that. But like, that's my attitude. Like, I just want us all to be safer. I want to be able to shoot an AR-15. I want to have my handguns. But like, I've got two kids, 2 and 4. Like, the notion that I am advocating out here for guns because I want everyone to die is fucking retarded. Like, no, obviously not.
And that's the othering thing, right? Like Dustin said. And I will say in the 90s, when all the gun bans were happening and everything, I can remember assorted associations that a lot of people, and when I took my firearms license, don't tell anybody you got guns. Nobody can know you have guns. Nobody must know what you do. And that did not work for the gay community. That did not work for anybody, because if people don't know you and somebody makes a crazy statement like, Dan owns guns, Dan has AR-15s, Dan wants mass shootings in Canada. Full stop. That's what he wants. Only reason to own these is to murder people. And if people don't know shooters and people who shoot, most people probably do. They just haven't said anything about it. But once you get to know those other people, you find out that they're just people. And you can go sit, have a coffee, and we may disagree. And, I'm pretty sure I disagree with a lot of people on a lot of things, but it doesn't mean they're my enemy, and it doesn't mean I need to destroy them. We have differing opinions. That's cool. That's what makes the world awesome, until they try and take your rights away because of how they feel. Then we have a problem. But yeah, like people need to know there's gun owners out here. Like, I was talking to somebody and they're like, oh, these gun owners, no one should own semi-automatic rifles, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I've got like 12 of them in my gun safe. Like, oh my God, why would you do that? Because I like sport shooting, and zombies come in all sizes and shapes. So I need different types of guns to deal with them. Same reason you have assorted knives in your cutlery drawer. But you just we need to come together, and we need to realize that, when politicians or special interest groups are telling you to be afraid of your fellow citizens, it's not your fellow citizens you need to be afraid of. Whether they own guns, whether they feel differently about you, the environment, no matter how they feel about trucker protests or masks or vaccines or whatever's going on, your fellow citizens are not your enemy. Like, we're all just people. And like Dan said, we all want the same thing. We all want a better country. We want our kids to do better than we did. We want better health care. We want everybody to be happy. We want everybody to have more money and do cool things and live long, happy lives. Like, no one wants things to be worse for other people, except a few people who are terrible human beings anyway. But the vast, vast, vast majority of people just want things to be better. We all want the same things. We all want to go home to our families at the end of the day.
Yep. No, it's so true. And the othering, the division, it drives me crazy, because we've never been further apart. We've never been screaming at each other from a greater distance. And that's the danger of it all. There's like no conversating. How dare you have a conversation? I'm sure Natalie feels that way. How dare you even shake her hand? You are basically the devil. And
I have to go home and have a shower, Dan.
Yeah.
Well, you see that in real life. You see that online too. But I think like the online discussion is tainted a bit, because there's like some people are just emboldened by the fact that they're online, so they can feel free to speak their mind, as it were. But then you also have campaigners who are on Reddit, for example, posting on behalf of their party and that they're campaigning for. And then you also have Russia and China doing their Russia and China things, just trying to destabilize the U.S. and Canada by, putting in hot takes and being abrasive and that kind of thing. And because it doesn't take a lot, if 5% of the commenters are abrasive assholes, sooner or later you start seeing that community, and you're like, oh my god, this community is terrible. These people are all the people who are opposite of me are monsters. But it could either be those paid commenters, it could be campaigners, or it could just be people being shitheads. There's plenty of them out there too.
It's true.
I see.
Well, and I think like you raised a good point with the online community being tweaked.
I think we're getting close to dead internet on Reddit. I think we're getting really close. The most recent 6 months here, the comments have been getting dumber to the point where it's like, I don't think this is a real person that's doing this. I think this is a bot. I think I'm replying to bots right now, and I think we're getting really close to the point where Reddit will be more bots than not, and you're not going to be. You're just going to be screaming into the abyss, not talking to actual people, not having real conversations.
Your bots arguing with their bots, arguing with their bots.
It's a bit scary though. Like it's a bit scary in that, I. Like the siloing, even with our own community, like, because I've seen it, and I've thought this is a long-standing issue with gun owners, is that there are gun owners and there are gun owners, if you know what I mean, and there are some that are online and very engaged and very informed, and then there are the other 2 million who are just the guy at the bench next to you at the shooting range who doesn't know that VZ58s are banned, doesn't know that Mark Carney is the new prime minister, doesn't give a shit. He's just a normal guy.
Yep.
And that the siloing up is harmful, both in that it creates deeper depths of conviction, which I don't think is great, because again, you get a lot of partisan attitudes that I don't think are healthy. Basically, but it also isolates people, and it gives people the false sense that, and I mean, I hate to say it because I know I do take some hope, but like, for example, these Polyev rallies, the polls say one thing, right? I don't think they're wrong. I loved the polls for the last 2 years, so I sure as shit I'm not going to be like, oh man, this last month they totally took a turn, I hate them. No, if they were right a year ago, they're right today.
Yeah.
Showing me a rally with 4,000 people attending Polyev's rally, that's awesome. But it's a microcosm of the online world where you go, yeah, that there's a bunch of people. Like if I took an online Twitter poll, if I went on Twitter and said, hey, who are you going to vote for? Well, 99% of the people responding to my poll would say conservative, because newsflash, my Twitter account is about guns and everyone that likes guns. It's, you're torquing the reality. And I think that the online world with gun owners, like it's awesome that people are getting educated, but at the same time, they're kind of like isolating themselves from what's actually out there. Like the average gun owner, like if you spent 8 hours in a gun shop talking to people to buy ammo, I think a lot of people in the online gun world would be very interested to see 95% of the people buying ammo at a gun shop, because they're not what you think. They don't espouse political beliefs you think they should. They don't have the knowledge you think they should. I mean, shit, I was in a gun shop and some old guy brought in a freaking pistol from World War I in a plastic bag. Yeah. During a buyback. It was a provincial buyback when the BC was like, oh, we're going to do a buyback on guns. This guy walks in with a friggin' Luger in like a Safeway plastic bag. This is dating it because back when Safeway had plastic bags, he had a friggin' Luger in a plastic bag, and
Wait a minute, he had a plastic bag? That monster!
Total weapon of mass destruction. And he walks into Wanstalls and goes, "How much will you give me for this?" And they went, "Do you have a license?" And this is not like ancient history. This is going back like 8 years. Like the gun registry was around, the handgun, the Luger should have been registered. The guy had he had an FAC. When they said, oh, Lacey goes, I have an FAC. And it's kind of like, no one's had an FAC for like 20 years, dude. this is not a thing.
I
But
still
by
know
all
people
means,
that say FACs.
bring me your overweighty Luger and I'll give you $500. Like, that's the reality of gun ownership in Canada.
Yeah.
Like, it's,
I think
the
that's not
people
just
watching
gun
this
owners.
podcast,
That's
it's
most
not
people.
normal.
That's most people about most things. Like, most people want to live their life. They go to work every day. They raise their kids. They come home. They're tired. They're not following. Like, most people I know that I talk to do not follow politics all the time. They are not interested because, and frankly, you know what? If it wasn't for the whole gun thing, I don't think I'd give a crap. Like, I don't really give a crap. They're all going to destroy the country. Like, it's just the speed at which
But
they
I think this is something that uniquely impacts gun owners and our community. Because, like, I spent the weekend debating whether or not M16s are AR-15s with a bunch of people, including bloke on the range YouTuber who has 250,000 followers. And the whole time I kept going, who cares? Because we are our own enemy. Like, we can get so involved in all of this technical bullshit that no one cares about. Like, you're going to spend 48 hours debating whether or not an M16 and an AR-15. No one gives a fuck.
Nope.
No one cares. And they're making the argument. The debate was about, because apparently not acknowledging or not adequately acknowledging, because I did actually say that they are the same, not adequately acknowledging that an AR-15 and an M16 is the same gun is giving ground in, and this is a quote, culture war bullshit, which no one cares about. And that's where I say everyone's the same. No one cares about guns, but gun owners need to recognize no one cares. Yeah. Move on. Like, reach out to the people who you think are FUDs, educate them. Don't get caught up in this inane bullshit around all these issues. Like, it's insane to me.
I will say the same thing happened in paintball about probably 20-ish years ago when the gun bans were all happening and they were starting to talk about regulating air guns. All of a sudden, nobody wanted to call a paintball gun a gun. You had to call it a paintball marker. And people were very concerned about this. And if you called it gun, like, it's like you call a gun a weapon at a gun range and people lose their freaking minds. It was the same thing calling a paintball marker a gun. And I just called them guns because they're paintball guns. And the people that are going to be upset about it aren't going to care what it is or what color it is. They hate the whole concept of the entire thing. And yet the paintball industry was so caught up. Like, I got so many arguments with people about just calling it a paintball gun. It's the same thing. Nobody cares about the semantics of it. They hate everything about it, everything it stands for, everything it represents. It doesn't matter what you call it.
Like, our opponents don't give a shit if an AR-15 is an M16. They don't want you to have one. Nope. The end. So stop wasting our time talking about this bullshit and just go back to the basic facts of a gun is a gun.
Gun is a gun.
And if someone's attacking you, you probably want one. And if you don't, you're going to call someone on 911 who's going to bring a gun to you to help you. That's like 911 is just a gun delivery service. That's all it is. Like, dude,
gun for hire on public funds. Yes.
Why would you call if someone's attacking you and you call 911? If the police officer's not bringing a gun, would you call 911? I don't even call 911 when they steal shit out of my car. As I said, like, I have found things that someone has stolen from me. I still haven't called 911 because it's not a pressing concern, but it is just, you're calling them because they'll bring a gun and stop the person who is doing the thing you don't want them to do.
I think one of the biggest things not a mistake because we didn't do it, but we kind of did sometimes, was allowing the conversation that there's good guns and bad guns back in the 70s when they decided, we have to register these bad guns, but you can keep them. And then they ban them and then they register more bad guns. You can keep them. And it's just a slow slide towards not having guns. Because like you said, Dan, there are no good guns and bad guns. And this weird idea that, a Browning BAR is an okay gun, but an FNAR is a bad gun. It's the same gun. An M16 or an AR-15 is the same as Mini 14, is the same as any other semi-automatic rifle, but we have allowed the certain guns are bad, certain guns are not bad, and we get back into that hunting rifle idea. So
I talked to a guy who works in the industry, has a company. He was talking to the technicians at the RCMP last week, and he floated that BAR FNAR thing past them, the RCMP technician.
mm-hmm.
And I said to him, because it was my image and all, we were chatting, and I said, so what did they say? And he said that the RCMP technician he was talking to said it was all just completely political bullshit.
Well, they know.
And this is a guy that works for the FRT.
Yeah, they know.
But it's.
But they have to deliver that work like that. Like they can't say. By the way, Dan did a great job on that. Again, on the video, we're gonna link it in Discord. That there's out of the Browning FN Portugal factory, they make 3 models of the modern BAR hunting rifle, not the old BAR, but they rebranded it as an FNAR or a Winchester SXAR. So exact same gun coming off the same factory floor, just marked differently. 2 of the somehow it didn't got caught up in the whole variant thing. It's
because they're in the FRT, and that's where it gets very like it's like their own issue, I guess, is that the FRT is so bizarre that the BAR, being from 1964, has a parent record for the Browning BAR all the way through to the Mark III match rifle. And then when FN makes the FNAR and the SXAR out of the Browning BAR Mark III match rifle, because those other manufacturers don't have the parent record of the BAR, they can just go, those are prohib, without having the ties back to the BAR parent record.
It's quite a use of the variant argument. Again, we had this argument with the variant back in the AK days, where somehow a 22 is an AK variant, but now the SXAR is not a variant of the BAR, which is completely insane. I think that's also...
So they banned the variant, they didn't ban the original gun. You can't go the other way.
Oh my god. Okay.
Kind of like you could still buy a Valmet, but a Valmet is absolutely an AK.
Yep.
100%.
But it's all just convenience. Like it's, that's all it is. And I think we are shaping up, like I said in that video, like the liberals are shaping up to use guns as a wedge where they say we're not banning hunting guns.
Yeah.
So what are the guns that Polyev wants to legalize, if not hunting guns? Which leads to the question of, well, if they're not hunting guns, they must be used to hurt people, which is, to bring it full circle, why I get so confused why the conservatives are not kind of owning this issue and defining it, because we live in a country that is our closest neighbor is, and I don't like, I sound hyperbolic, but like the president has literally said he wants to annex our country. Like, that's a bit fucked up. Like, also reality that this is the reality we live in at the same time as the conservatives are not comfortable running on the notion that guns are a useful tool for defense is bizarre. Like, you've got to, if the ballot box question is Trump, which we keep hearing from pundits, how are you not running on the notion that Canadians should be able to defend themselves? Like, that's pretty simple. Like, the dots between the line between those two dots is real short.
Yep.
But that they still aren't comfortable doing it is bizarre.
You could do a real feel good policy on that one that would appeal to people who would be centrist or even left of center on that one.
Dude,
because I've seen a lot.
I had like a whole 1 minute ad spot where I thought you could have like Ronnie, the Bren gun girl, that famous picture of the girl building Bren guns for Inglis. You could have like that. You could have some nice voiceover about defending Canada, blah, 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 going to like World War I guys jumping over the trench. You could have Pega Mega Bow, like all of this old school Canada gun, awesome shit. Like so cool. Like Inglis, Friends, you name it. Like Ross rifles, although controversial. I'm a
Maybe
Ross rifle guy.
I love it. I love it.
Maybe a little quick view of a Ross rifle that no one really has to focus on, and then back to Lee Enfields that everyone loves, and you can have all this long branch stuff, you know, all the way up to like the Avro Arrow, and be like the Liberals have stuffed us on defense would be the overarching theme.
Mhm.
It is such an easy ad to make, and yet, you know, here we are. Like they're
Stand up for
again,
Canada, fellas.
the Conservatives are losing an election on nationalism. What
So wild.
the fuck?
Yeah. Well, it'd be cool. It'd be cool if they could run on like, hey, we're gonna start a civilian marksmanship program that's gonna be funded by the government. We're gonna
God, that
train
would be
people.
awesome.
And we're gonna
Might be
train
part-
people at first aid, and we're gonna train people at
didn't
I
one
don't
of
know
the-
some other like non-gun stuff too. We're gonna
Didn't
make
one of the Liberal
make
MPs
Canada ready.
suggest that recently?
Yeah. Yeah. So just because someone suggests something doesn't mean you can't steal it from them.
Yes, it does. That wouldn't be moral or
That
right.
you carbon tax?
Yeah. I think just because it's someone else's idea doesn't mean you can't steal it.
Like where is like Polyev should be going out there and being like, hey, here's if you got $100, you could buy a Lee Enfield. I
Mhm.
know that they have a shit pile in the stores, way more than we could ever need. And at $100, no one's gonna care if it's really good. You're just getting it. Like I would buy one. I would be like, oh, shit, $100 for a long branch? Fuck yeah. I don't give a
Wanna
shit.
high-
5.5. Piece out the perfect one.
Get
Oh,
yourself
yeah.
some high-
Yeah.
Get yourself some high power action.
Oh,
No,
Sorry, yes.
don't even
High
bring up
power,
those
not
high
high
powers.
I'm sorry. I know.
Tragic.
Too soon. Too soon.
They were real bad
Yes, they
before they
were.
were gone.
And
But
Hey,
it's
if they're
still
cheap,
a
I still
travesty
want one.
I dig one.
Yeah, for the right price, no problem.
for the right. That's what she
Piece of
said.
Canadiana. Canadiana.
I don't blame you. Yeah, I think I think they gotta take hold of that with both hands. It sucks.
Yeah,
Especially
It is weird that the Liberals who have spent the last 10 years running Canada down are now the Captain Canada guys.
it's
it is
but
weird.
Well, and having
like,
watched like
nationalism has been left in Canada for a long time now. That's the way
it's bizarre though. Like I don't like, and I guess again being not super partisan, but being a gun guy, like I was at Colt Canada years ago, where like it kills me because I watched them make the barrel that is in my Colt Canada AR. Like
Cool.
he was making it, and it was in the gun, and I bought that gun. And they were also welding up Lee Enfields for parade rifles.
Yeah.
And they had a whole rack of them, and I was like, "Where are these from?" And the guy's like, "Oh, they're from the stores." And I was like, "Well, it's a shame that you're just welding them up for parade rifles." He goes, "We have so many of these. Like, no one cares. It's not a big deal." And now looking at it, going like, "Dude, if you're Pierre Poilievre, how are you not just going?" Like I said, you got $100, you can buy one. You can like, if I was Pierre Poilievre, I would literally be subsidizing PAL courses and offering a bulk discount on Lee Enfields. Like you get a PAL for $200, and for $250, you can also get a Lee Enfield when you leave. Like that would be my deal.
That would be awesome.
If you pass, as long as you
awesome.
pass, like you get it on the way out.
Yeah, like
Here's your pal.
congratulations.
3
You
days
got it.
later.
Here's a 303.
Dan, I still have to say, I am personally offended that you never ran for leadership of the Liberal Party. I think that strategy would have been rock solid, set for success. You know, be a very different election right now.
Liberals for Lee Enfields. That'll be after Mark Carney loses. That'll be the
Nice.
next slogan.
Slogan could just be you with a rifle outline of your body with the rifle above your head, and a Canadian flag in
Oh.
the other hand. Be amazing.
Dare to dream. Dare to dream.
Awesome. Well, we're just about 2 hours past right now. Great conversation. Anything else to cover before we kind of wrap things up? It's been fun. I don't think so.
Vote.
What are you going to say to the voters who are on the fence?
Vote.
Get off the fence.
Yeah.
Vote
It's that
accordingly.
simple. Like we're looking at an election where realistically, I am going to make a video on this next week, but like realistically, even if you think Mark Carney is going to be better than Pierre Poilievre in every way that is more important than guns, because I've seen this. I was going to make a video because I've seen it after that video I made last week about the Liberal strategy that a lot of people were going, well, I'm a gun owner, but I think there are very serious issues confronting Canadians. And I think Mark Carney is going to be better at confronting those than Pierre Poilievre. I'm not going to deny that opinion. Mark Carney has an incredible resume. He is a very capable person. But his ability to influence change in all of these issues is going to be diminished in every way except guns. If you, in percentages, if you think Mark Carney is going to be better on the economy, which is the one area that I think he would, from his resume, would certainly be better at, how much better is he going to be? It's not enough to say, I'm a gun owner, so he's going to be better. How much better? What, 15%? 20% maybe? Like realistically, his hands are kind of tied. The economy is a massive machine. He has the Treasury Board, he has Parliament, etc. So maybe 15, 20%. But he will be 100% worse on guns.
Yep.
In terms of the impact on your life, his election will have a dramatically larger input on what you can do with guns than it will on anything else. Like, I mean, I'm lucky enough to own a home, but it's something that is important to me. All these young people who, again, I am 40, but I still like to think of myself as young. The young people that go, oh, housing affordability is a big thing. How much of an impact do you think Mark Carney is going to have on housing affordability versus Poilievre?
Almost none.
Because newsflash, the price on the house you buy next year, regardless of who wins, is still going to be insanely fucking high. It will be tens of thousands of dollars apart, depending on who wins. Whereas you won't own AR-15s. You will not be able to buy a handgun. These are very material changes in what you can do. And that's what I want people to realize, is that it's not about who's better or who's worse, because in most ways you're talking incremental change. But in this specific area with guns, it's going to be a fucking huge change. Like, my dad could own a handgun. My grandfather could own a handgun. I own handguns. My kids can't.
Nope.
One of these electoral outcomes cements that fact. Period. It's super simple. It doesn't, like, will my kids be able to buy a house? Unfortunately, probably not, because houses will be insanely expensive. But whether or not they can buy a handgun will be determined by this election.
Well said.
Got to get him in finance. Got to get him that job for the Bank of England.
Oh,
then we'll be able to buy that house.
Only I knew someone that worked at Goldman Sachs or something, or maybe like a big finance company. I don't know. Like, do you know, like, just the last thing I'll say is, I gotta say, there is, I don't know how to put this. If only there was some kind of example of a G7 leader with a background in finance in the New York finance sector who's really good at making a ton of money, but kind of sucks as a person. I just don't know if that exists.
Yeah, there's one that kind of comes to my mind.
Michael Ignatieff?
Who doesn't have leadership qualities, but everyone went, well, he made a shit pile of money, so it must be pretty good. I mean, man.
Which is weird, because everybody hates Elon Musk now.
Yeah.
I've hated Elon Musk before it was cool. I'll say it. That guy is a dipshit, but whatever. The end of the day, yeah, I think I hope that Canadians don't suck.
Get out and vote.
The end.
All we can do is get out and vote, convince our friends and family to do the same, convince those that definitely won't vote Conservative to vote NDP or the Bloc if you're in Quebec.
There's only one person on this call right now whose friends and families' votes matter, and that's Dave's.
It's true.
The rest of us are too far west.
And unfortunately, most of my friends and family are in areas that are completely conservative to begin with.
Oh,
Anyway.
and like,
okay, so none of our votes matter. Okay, well, maybe
Well, I
some
mean,
of our
that's not-
listeners do.
some votes
be
in
worse.
BC are going to potentially matter. The BC could still be a thing, right?
Thing is, it's over by the time it gets to BC.
It'll be
Maybe it
interesting.
won't
though,
be.
I will
Maybe
say
it'll be
in
closer.
this,
Yeah.
every election previously, I've always been a pretty not proud, but strong proponent of the fact that like gun owners don't matter. I hate to say it because like I know people don't like hearing that, but there's 2.4 million of us across the country. But unfortunately, we are spread across ridings in such a way where we don't have significant input.
Yeah.
But this election, if the polls are to be believed, it could come down real tight in such a way where like gun owners could totally make the difference in this particular
5
election.
million votes is a lot of votes.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
And in an election where it's tied, like, man, yeah, it could be a big difference.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
So go vote. Also, if you're going to vote, you should also volunteer. Reach out. Talk to your EDA, your electoral district associations. Get involved.
Called them last week. They're eagerly anticipating having lots of things to do. So the world is run by those who show up.
Yep.
My favorite quote is that amidst a gunfight with his neighbor, Hunter S. Thompson said, "In democracy, you need to be a player."
I love that.
So if he could say that while shooting a gun at his neighbor, then you sure as fuck can get volunteered for your local riding association.
It's true.
Awesome.
And
Well,
yes,
Dan-
he did actually. People could look it up. He did
Oh, yeah.
actually say that while shooting a gun at his neighbor because him and his neighbor were shooting at each other.
Speaking of crazy
As one
people.
does. As one does. Yeah.
Democracy.
Yeah.
You've got to be a player.
Dan, where can people learn more about you and view your stuff?
Well, hopefully in the future. We'll see how that shakes out. Calibremag.ca. That's our website, which I don't update frequently enough. There's YouTube and Twitter and all the other stuff. Meta platforms I don't post much on because Facebook decided to hate me about 8 years ago. But yeah, Calibre Mag.
Me too.
Gun shops. A lot of gun shops. We have magazines in a lot of gun shops. So
Cool.
that will be the places. And like I said, hopefully it keeps on going.
Fantastic.
Don't forget, Calibre spelled Canadian, Calibre.
Calibre.
The Americans call it Calibre. I'm not even kidding.
Oh,
When I went to
Calibre.
SHOT Show, I got my badge for SHOT Show like 8 years ago, and Lay's like, "Hey, are you from Calibre?" And I was like, "See."
Ole.
It's like the Office Sabre thing.
Pretty much, it was exactly like that. So I just
That's
own it.
freak-
It's
that's-
Calibre Mag.
Freaking amazing.
Love it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on and chatting with us about this and engaging in the shit show.
I love the
Yes.
shit show.
Welcome back anytime, Dan. Don't be a stranger.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks.